Good morning. Welcome everyone to the last lecture of the 2024 series, Real World Perspectives on Poverty Solutions. It's really great to have everyone back in the room and welcome people who are online into the room. We are partnering today with the Sustainable Food Systems Initiative to bring our speaker to campus. And so I'd like to introduce Jen Garner, the John G. Searle Assistant Professor of Nutritional Sciences, to introduce our speaker.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are so pleased to have you with us. We know it has been a busy week, and I think a very timely opportunity to welcome you to our campus, Barbie. So I just want to start by welcoming you and thanking you for accepting our invitation. We're so pleased to have you here. So for anyone who might not be familiar with Barbie, I'm going to provide an introduction and then let you take it from here, okay? Barbie Izquierdo is a prominent advocate for food justice, passionately committed to alleviating hunger and empowering communities. Raised in North Philadelphia, her early experiences with food insecurity shaped her current mission. Growing up in a single-parent household, she witnessed the struggles that families face in securing nutritious food. Izquierdo's advocacy began with her involvement in community organizations focused on hunger relief. This platform allowed her to share her story and advocate for systemic change, highlighting the personal and emotional toll of food insecurity. Her story gained national attention in the documentary A Place at the Table, which was released back in 2012, but the issues persist, which explores, of course, hunger in America. Barbie's candid portrayal of her struggles resonated with audiences and with policymakers, sparking conversations about the need for comprehensive food assistance programs and policy reforms. Beyond raising awareness, Izquierdo works to implement practical solutions. She promotes community gardens, supports local food banks, and advocates for equitable resource distribution. Her leadership in these initiatives has earned her respect within the food justice movement. Izquierdo is also a sought-after speaker and consultant, clearly, sharing her expertise at conferences, universities, and public forums. Her insights into the interconnectedness of food security, poverty, and social justice influence policymakers and inspire new advocates like all of us in this room. Her ability to connect with diverse audiences and her dedication to her cause make her a powerful voice in the fight against hunger. Despite the challenges, Izquierdo remains driven by a deep sense of purpose. She works tirelessly to ensure that no one experiences the pain of food insecurity, including her own children. As a fellow mom, I appreciate that. Through her advocacy, Barbie Izquierdo champions food justice and embodies the resilience and strength of those she seeks to uplift, demonstrating the power of individual action in driving social change and community empowerment. So with that, please join me in welcoming Barbie to University of Michigan.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I come with many disclosures before I start speaking, and usually it would be me just trying to fight my nerves, but as an adult and embracing who I am completely, I come with these disclaimers. I'm going to cry at some point. Please don't be distracted by my tears. It's just, I'm talking about my real life, so it's very difficult to talk about it and not be there, even though I'm here with you and not currently in those struggles. I need something to play with. So if you see me fidgeting around, moving around and talking, it's because I was diagnosed recently with autism and ADHD, and I'm just learning how to embrace those things and do whatever makes me comfortable. Because of my ADHD, I may start talking about one thing and run down and lose my train of thought. Please charge it to my brain and not my heart, because I'm a very focused and dedicated individual. But thank you, Jen, for your lovely introduction. I wanted to, as I told her earlier, I wanted to approach this a little differently than what I usually do. Her introduction, I wanted to talk about who I am as a person, for you to know the compassionate, empathetic Barbie. What you're going to see behind me or to the sides of me is my journey through poverty. So it's going to be difficult for me to see. I want it to be transparent, so you will see literally from the front doors of my house inside, some of the social justice movements that I've been a part of, including trying to find a friend of mine who went missing. Unfortunately, we still don't have justice for her, but you'll see those pictures in there as well, so that you guys have some context. And you'll also see some pictures with my speaking engagements and advocacy, not just with mental health, but food insecurity, poverty, and domestic violence. So with that being said, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. I think that these talks are very, very important, and it was important for me today to show up as who I am and not who people think I am. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and my story, and what you didn't hear in my introduction was the things that I've been able to accomplish. The point of this talk today for me is talking about the importance of incorporating people with lived experience, having them involved in the blueprint of programs, and not just calling them in to tell their stories. And continuing to engage with them as well throughout the process, letting people own their stories and say things from their own words, and being compensated fairly for their level of vulnerability, for their hard work, their stories, and the things that you can't really put a price on, like emotional labor. So I'm going to start. Do I just press enter? There we go. Okay. So my name is Barbie Izquierdo. I have been in this fight against hunger for about 17 years now. I have worked with a lot of different organizations that fight food insecurity, but that stemmed from my personal struggle with food insecurity. I have 2 children, Aiden and Leilani. As noted, I was featured in a documentary about hunger in America called A Place at the Table. Can y'all hear me? I think my mic is still off. Perfect. Can y'all hear me? No? I'll just stay here. Okay. See, that's the fidgeting stuff that I was trying to tell y'all about. I already want to start moving around. Hello. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was trying to start moving before these difficult pictures came up. But yes, I have 2 children, Aiden and Leilani. This particular picture is of my neighbor's kitchen. It shows the things that we have to deal with behind closed doors that no one knows about. We talk about the importance of feeding children, having food at the table, but we don't really discuss what the table looks like. What does home look like? Is it safe? And what are the resources available to the people who are living in these circumstances? My journey started because I couldn't feed my children. No problem. I was looking for my napkins that I left over here because I know my tears are gonna come soon. My journey started because I was living in a house with no heat when my son was 3 months old. Because of that, the eye boogies you get in the morning were freezing up and sealing his eyes shut. I had to, at the time I was in school trying to be a certified medical technician, and I had to leave school early to try to help my son. This started at 3 weeks, and the daycare providers were just too afraid to try to pry his eyes open. So when I would go to the emergency room, the woman you see there was someone that I met through a program in the emergency room. There was a woman who came in and asked me if she can ask a couple questions, if I would be willing to take a survey, and I would always say no, until the day that they told me that my son would need surgery to salvage his vision so that he wouldn't go blind. That day, the lady came in asking if I was interested in taking a survey, and I said yes. And she asked me if I had running water, if I had a working stove, if I had a working refrigerator. And I answered all those questions, and it was the first time in my life that anyone had ever asked me questions about my household, my well-being. So instead of saying that and just staying quiet, I violated everything that I had been taught about not speaking up, and whatever happens behind closed doors, stay behind closed doors. And I told her everything. I told her how I thought it was my fault that my son was going blind. I told her that I couldn't feed my kids. I told her that I was running from an abusive relationship, and she connected me with the woman that you saw in the picture, who gave me my platform, who taught me that I can use my voice, not just to fight for myself, but to fight for others. And I've been doing it ever since. I'm okay, I'm just trying to get the lump out of my throat. Poverty is difficult. It's not just the lack of financial resources and of finances, but it's living in survival mode every day. And I have been recovering from poverty for 4 years now. I made it out. I was able to take my children and move us to Florida, and we have a better life now. But what I've learned is, even when you're not in poverty, you have to fight the poverty mindset, because that doesn't leave when you change your address. So I've been fighting to show the world that, yes, this is difficult, to get on stages, to talk to people about the most vulnerable and difficult things in your life, which include not being able to feed your children. In the film, you can see that I said I would have to put my children to bed, yelling at them and punishing them like if they did something wrong. And it was only because I didn't have enough food to give them. And at their ages, I didn't have the heart to say, mommy doesn't have it. So I would just say, go to bed. Why are you not listening? And it definitely took a toll on my children. At first, it started with, once we got out of poverty and our fridge was full, I didn't expect to see my son as I'm talking about what we were eating. It got to the point that when my children wanted to have a second plate, that they would ask permission. And I know that that may seem like something very small, but as a mother, knowing that your children want to eat something and that they're scared and that they have to ask permission was something that was really, really hard for me. Now, you know, it's reversed. Now I can't get them to stop eating. Our experiences have definitely made us closer. And I love that they get to see that I did this for them, but that I'm still doing it for them, and that I do it because I don't want anyone else to go through it. In my talks and in different lectures, webinars that I give, I talk about the importance of engaging people like me, because having my voice heard sparked something inside of me that gave me my life's calling, because I'm not supposed to be here.
Everything about me says that I was supposed to fail. I was a teen mom of 2. I didn't graduate high school. I got a GED. I was a mom to a single parent household. I was born in a single parent household. My father was incarcerated for the first 10 years of my life. Like, I was doomed. And it wasn't until someone heard me that I realized life doesn't have to be this way. That's one of the things that we don't really talk about when it comes to poverty, is the limitation mindset that it places on the person who's living through it. Because if you don't know the world, you don't know what you're capable of. You only know what's around you. And I would have never thought that I would be who I am today, or where I am today, given my experiences. There were many days where I would be hiding from my children as they were eating, because I didn't want them to see that I wasn't eating the same thing, or that I wasn't eating the same amount, or sometimes I wasn't eating anything at all. These sacrifices have made me very resilient. And as we talk about poverty, I want to make sure to mention some of the good things that come with poverty, because we all know, the mental warfare and all of those things that stem from it. But was that me? No. Oh, okay. It's okay. It's just, I hear that and I'm like, wait, my kids, who's at my house? But the resilience that I have today is something that I would not have gained if I didn't go through what I went through. The resourcefulness that I've learned, and that I can, the tool that I can be to others because of all of the different programs that I went through, because of all the different processes that I know. I've learned how to advocate for others. So now I'll tell you where that's taken me. With a GED, I went back to school. I went to Esperanza College. Esperanza created a scholarship so that I could be able to attend, and now students from low-income neighborhoods are still able to take advantage of that scholarship and go to school. So I didn't let that stop me. In 2022, I was awarded the Global Citizen Prize for my fight defeating poverty, which, let me tell y'all, at the end of the day, like, I showed up today as me. I'm a North Philly girl. I, had my dress up clothes and all of those things, but with the climate that we're in right now, and me stressed dyeing my hair pink, I was like, I'm gonna show up as me, and hopefully everyone here will resonate with the person that I am, and not really worried about how I'm dressed or how my hair looks. But aside from winning the Global Citizen Prize, I was also appointed by President Biden into the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. So for the past 2 years, I've been able to work with the president and talk about what are on the nutrition side, what should we be doing? What needs to change? What are some innovative thoughts that we can bring into hunger solutions, and especially given the White House conference and all of that work. So if you would have told me even 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that my name would be on the president's desk, I'd be like, girl, you crazy. What is you talking about? Like, no. And even when I got that email, I was like, oh, I'm going to jail. Why is the president investigating me? So it was a shock for me to know that this little brown-skinned girl from North Philly who used to run away from gunshots can now sit in the same rooms with Steph and Aisha Curry and Chef Jose Garces and have my voice matter just as much as theirs. And I say all of that because, again, I never would have thought that I would have made it this far. And I could have just got myself out of poverty and left it at that. But to me, the legislative changes are the most important. The systemic barriers that are in place to make sure that people in poverty stay there need to change. America has this huge stigma about people. I am a product of public assistance. I never sold food stamps. I don't fit the welfare queen stigma. However, if you see me and, I'm this young Latina girl with all these tattoos, and if you look at me on paper before my accomplishments, again, you would probably think that I wouldn't have done much with my life. Involving people with lived experience into blueprints of work that's being done not only shifts the outcome of whatever you're doing, but it builds that individual reassurance and strength into that person. Poverty is looked at a lot as an individual failing, and the things that are put in place to keep us there aren't really considered. And I apologize that I go back and forth between saying, keep us there and that I'm out of poverty. But again, I'm still very much in this recovery mode. So I don't mean to disrespect anyone that is still living in poverty, but my mind is still there. I've had to go through a lot of therapy, and doing these things are triggering and sometimes re-traumatizing. So it's difficult to be able to just be sometimes, and not want to be judged or viewed either way, either for my failings or just for my accomplishments. Because as I said in showing you all this video, is the importance of the journey. It's going to be flawed. It's going to have its ups and downs, but it's definitely worth it. That woman that day asking me those questions helped me find my life's calling. I do have a 9-to-5. I work for Feeding America. I'm their director of Neighbors Community Engagement. So aside from speaking engagements, I work with Feeding America and people that we serve directly to provide them opportunities to speak, to provide learning opportunities for them so that they can learn advocacy, how to tell their stories and all of those sort of things, but in an ethical and respectful way. Aside from the work that I do with Feeding America, I just feel blessed and scared. It's a lot of pressure at all times. Being in a film about hunger that's seen all over the world has definitely made me afraid of showing the world who I am. The world got to see my struggles, so I feel like I always have to redeem myself, or that I can't mess up because someone's gonna see it and they're gonna know. But I think that it's important to show all of those things. If I hadn't found my calling in speaking and in advocating for others, I wouldn't have done all of the work to fight for WIC, to fight for SNAP, the Farm Bill, all of these different things that even though I can't benefit from and I don't qualify for, that I know that other families can, and that they're benefiting in ways that I never could. We are in a very hard time right now. There are a lot of things that are gonna be really scary. A lot of programs that are gonna need protections. And they're gonna need our fight. They're gonna need people like me who are willing to talk about the emotional toll the physical toll of food insecurity and not just food insecurity, but other social determinants of health as well, so that we can continue to make sure that our families are protected and receive the help that they need. Those are my babies. They're not babies anymore. But whew, now I lost my train of thought. See, that's that ADHD. I saw my kids and got so happy. Little Barbie, yes. Since I was a little girl, I was always very inquisitive. I'm just gonna play this again just so that it's not black in the background. I was very inquisitive, and I always knew that there was more out there, but I didn't know how to get it, and I didn't know if I was worthy. And I think that fighting as hard as I do has definitely taught my children that even if it's not this, that they can have a passion and they can fight for it and use their voice, not just to fight for themselves, but to fight for others. Food insecurity has impacted my life in negative ways, but it has also changed my life. My degree is in criminal justice. I'm someone who I seek fairness in all things. I never thought I would be here. I didn't think that this is what I would be doing for the rest of my life. But when you find something that speaks to your soul and sets your soul on fire, absolutely, absolutely pursue that. It's difficult knowing that the world has seen my struggle, but my hope is that people can see themselves in me, and that people can know that if I did it, you can do it too. That's what it's for the ones who can't read Spanish. That's what my shirt says. It says, si yo pude, tú puedes, which means if I can, you can. It's important to me to always incorporate my culture in some sort of way. So especially during, Hispanic heritage and all of those sort of things, which was when I got this shirt. But anyway, I believe that I'm being used as a vessel to encourage others and to help them see their worth, and to let them know that the world doesn't end in poverty. We have to be realistic and acknowledge that just saying, oh, I did it so you can do it, is not enough. I am blessed enough to say that in meeting the people that don't look like me, that gave me the resources, that's what helped me get out. It wasn't just my fight. It wasn't just my resilience. It was that I was blessed enough to know organizations and people who were the exact opposite of me, who helped me to get out of poverty. I was fortunate, but for millions of Americans, they don't have those resources. They don't have those connections or those people that can tell them, go to this program, go to that program, or hey, I know Johnny over there in the department of, call Johnny directly. And as I'm blessed enough to say that, I want to make sure that the next call is call Barbie, because she could, even if it's for words of encouragement, like, I know that I found my purpose. And even though it's through something so difficult, I think that I want to help change the view, and I want to help end the stigma of food insecurity and of poverty. I did write some notes down only because, again, my neurodivergence. So I want to just read those little things, and then if you all have questions, I like talking to people and not talking at people. So I would love that. But I did say poverty is not just the lack of finances and financial resources. It affects every aspect of a person's life and feels like mental warfare. It affects physical well-being, mental and emotional health, relationships, and it affects the person's future. Poverty is systemic barriers and inequality. It's a structural issue requiring systemic change and community support. Poverty causes isolation and individual failings along with setbacks. People have daily trade-offs, like having to choose between rent and feeding themselves. They have the weight of uncertainty of not knowing where their next meal is going to come from or who they can turn to in a moment of life. If their car breaks down, if their AC unit doesn't work, if their heat doesn't work, there's always this level of uncertainty of not knowing how you're going to fix something, but you're the only problem solver. Ooh, this one's a little difficult for me. The impact that poverty has on your dreams and your goals. I can't stress enough that I'm only here because people that did not look like me helped me. My dreams while I was living in poverty was to stay alive. My dream for my children while living in poverty was to not get shot. Before I left Philadelphia, there was a man who was murdered by police officers named Walter Wallace, and the city went crazy, looting. There were fires, and this was the environment that I had to raise my children in. I fortunately was able to get up and get out, but people live there every single day of their life. When there's looting, when there's not looting, when there's violence, when there's drugs, they don't have a choice. The invisible labor and the hidden work that it takes to make ends meet is also something that takes a detrimental toll on people, because the crying, the stress, the sometimes lack of support system, or the lack of understanding because the people who are around you are going through the same thing. And the toll that it takes on you as a person, as a provider, to know that there's a lack of something and you can't do anything about it, is really difficult. Well, let me rephrase that, because clearly I did something about it, so you can do something about it. But just with the acknowledgement that, again, things are put in place to keep us there. So as you're fighting to get out and you're building your resilience, there's still this invisible labor that you're going through and that you're putting yourself through, aside from fighting all the stigma and judgment. But I don't want to end on those negative things. So before I take questions, I just want to reiterate that coming from poverty, as they say, adversity builds character. It makes you stronger. I know that those things can be difficult to see sometimes, because people that come from poverty can be very short-tempered, very angry. And it's not that we're mad at you, it's that there's a distrust in the system. There's a anger towards the world for the circumstances, and there's just this tiredness that you live in every single day. So as you all go into your field and work with people like me, please, please, please remember that. When you have people that seem a little difficult, or that may not be as open in telling their stories or talking to you about what's wrong, just please have an understanding that for some people, this is generational, like myself. For other people, it's life circumstances. It happens. It can happen to anyone in any moment. And as long as you keep that empathy, the compassion, the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes without discrediting or taking away from their experience, then you will be one of those resourceful people for others. It's very, very, very important to build trust with people who have lived experience, because they're not just going to trust a stranger. They've been let down, they've been betrayed, and those things are very difficult to just continue on with life as if nothing ever happened. So I encourage you to remember the resilience that these people have, to remember that they are not just a number, that they are people who are raising families, who are trying to help themselves, and that we're all just human. We're all just trying to figure it out. This work comes with burnout. So take care of yourselves. Vicarious trauma is real. You can listen to people telling their stories and going through what they go through, and take that with you. It's very heavy. It feels very heavy. So just, again, a reminder to take care of yourselves. Make sure you all have a support system that you can go to. Understand that we mean well. I've heard too many times that people who are, on welfare don't want help. And I've heard too many times that they just want to cheat the system. I'm proof that that's not true. It's not everyone. But what I will say, for the people that are judging the ones that do, because they were my neighbors, is that we're all just trying to make ends meet. And the desperation that comes from not being able to feed yourself or your family makes people do things that they normally would not do. So please give us grace. Please understand that we want to do better. We want better than what our circumstances are, and that given the right tools, anybody can do what I've been doing. But we need that acknowledgement of it needs to come with help. We can't do it on our own. And that boils into any and every aspect of life. You work for an organization, the organization can't do it on their own. They need every single role, every person to work together to make things work. So hopefully today, you all will leave with wanting to do exactly that, to work together with people who have lived experience and know that we can contribute great ideas, that we have community-based solutions, and that we want to be a part of those solutions and not just consider the problem. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And I just want to kind of extend that thanks a little bit by naming a couple of things. One, I really appreciate your vulnerability in talking to us today, especially this week, a week that has to be especially difficult to kind of do this. I know that for me, it's been hard to get through the week, hard to get to the end of it. And one of the things that I've been thinking about again and again as I've been moving myself through the week is, Trevor, it's much harder for a lot of other people than for you to kind of engage this. So I'm just really, really grateful to you for kind of coming to Michigan and talking to us and being a part of it. One of the things that I've really valued about our series has been that we have had people with lived experiences talking alongside university professors. And I think that that juxtaposition is really, really valuable for student learning, but I think it's really, really valuable for all of us who can kind of get to hear that, kind of to think about the issue from all sides. And one of the things that Stephanie Land, who is another person like this, who wrote some books and kind of isn't in poverty anymore, talked about, which you've kind of also reiterated, that again, I'm really grateful that we have that here, is this kind of idea that, like she talked about kind of being a desirable messenger, like that she is able to stand up in front of a group of people. She's a white woman. She's able to kind of talk in ways that people are ready to hear. And you're obviously also capable of doing that. But I appreciated the ways you talked about kind of people who maybe are coming across with a different energy and how that still needs to be heard, that anybody has the potential to kind of do the kinds of things that you've done. So I want to just kind of name those two things as kind of gratitudes as we kind of move into a time of question and answer. And also thank you for, in some ways, this is a really nice full series for our full circle for our series. We started with a couple of movie producers who wrote a movie about the opioid epidemic in Ohio. And so now to have someone who's been featured in a movie kind of takes that back together for us. So, thank you. So we've got people who are eager to raise their hands, and we're going to turn to them now.
Thank you so much. I could relate to so much of what you said. Can I give you a hug?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm a hugger. That was just the hug in sound form.
Yes, yes, because I've always wondered what that sounds like. You know, your lived experience, although mine wasn't exactly the same, was very similar, and I could relate to the PTSD that you talked about. Like, I still wonder some days when I'm walking into class, are they going to find out who I am and how I don't belong here? You know, and I was having a conversation on the way in today with a friend of mine, and you know, I went to my psychiatrist this morning. I also just got diagnosed with ADD at 42 years old. You know, just started medication.
Yes.
And she asked me about hypomania, which I've wondered for a long time. Am I bipolar? Do I have something on that spectrum? I was talking to a good friend of mine who also has bipolar, and the doctor was like, okay, we're just going to put a pin in this. And I was talking to her, and you know, they asked me the questions. Do you find yourself excessively spending? I'm talking to my girlfriend about this, and she goes, well, of course we excessively spend when we have money because we've lived in poverty for so long. And it's never like I'm out spending thousands of dollars. I'm out spending $100 on something that I actually need. It just happens to deplete the bank account. And, you know, and it's so true. But so back to my actual question, how do you feel that poverty impacts mental health diagnoses? Because I know for me it has. They couldn't address my clinical depression. They couldn't address my ADHD until I was in a place where I was secure enough, not having to worry about paying my rent, feeding my kids, before we could actually look at the physiological aspect of that. And same thing with the bipolar. Like, the symptoms they look for sometimes are just people's fight or flight in situations. So this whole conversation really tied into where I was at this morning.
Thank you. Yes, I love that. And what's your name?
Brady.
Brady, nice to meet you, Brady. I love you. I don't know you and I love you. And we have met for a reason, because I have never I just found out not too long ago, but I've never talked about being bipolar, and I am bipolar. It's, I think, the diagnosis that comes with the most stigma. So it's very difficult for me to accept. It does make me feel abnormal. And I embrace my neurodivergence. Like, I'm neurospicy. I love it. But when it comes to being bipolar, it's the scary thing. So what you said needed to be said to me today, so that I can also stand with grace and being proud of who I am in all aspects. So I thank you for your comments. As far as your question, my therapist and my psychiatrist both told me when I started working with them, we need to take care of this first. This was the immediate, the PTSD, the stress, the anxiety, those sort of things. And it wasn't until I was on medication for those things that they were able to say, wait a minute, I think there's something else here. Living in poverty, when I'll give very, very personal. My grandfather died in my arms when I was 6 years old. And that was what started my journey in therapy. So from the time that I was 6 years old until I was 14, therapy started with trying to help me understand what happened. Unfortunately, my mother has a bunch of mental health issues, including schizophrenia, and she hurts herself physically. So growing up, I was always afraid of not just, the abuse that I was going through and all of those things, but about my mother and what she was capable of. It wasn't until growing up that I had an understanding of what her mental health limitations were that I really was able to separate her actions from who she is as a person. But having the mental health diagnosis of being bipolar was scary because I saw my mom, and that's all I knew growing up. I just knew that I didn't want to be like my mom. I'm very grateful for my diagnosis, even though they've come at 35 and 36. I'm 37 now. But I just turned 37 in October, so I can still say it's recent. It has changed my life because I've learned that even though it feels wrong to say it right now, I've learned that there's nothing wrong with me, that I'm just different. I learn different, I understand different, but what that also means is that I give different solutions. So as you're battling your own mental health and trying to figure it out, just as a personal note to you, please give yourself that grace. I tell myself every day, grace is where compassion meets understanding. And every single time I'm unkind to myself, I repeat that over and over again. I don't think that the people who were helping me with my mental health at the time could diagnose anything else because there was so much trauma there. So please don't feel bad about being diagnosed at the age that you are, because sometimes they do need to figure some other things out first. I'm grateful for the understanding of that now, because the entire time I just felt like something was wrong with me. But now I know the difference between, what was caused by my trauma, what is genetic, and I'm learning to navigate life through those. So if there's any way that I can help you, I'm very reachable. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a clinician, but I can offer an ear. And as one neurodivergent to another, I can just offer you community. So please stay in touch. I know that was very long-winded, so I apologize, but are there any other questions?
Thank you, Barbie. So in my work, I'm often in the role of a messenger, helping to share people's stories publicly, especially working with people with lived experience with poverty issues and trying to make the connections between their experiences with these systemic barriers to help make the case for why the systems need to change. So I'm curious, just given all your experience with public speaking, with media interviews, the documentary you were in, what were the biggest difference makers in those situations that helped you to feel comfortable sharing your story, helped you feel like you could do it on your own terms and retain some control, when I think, ultimately it's a pretty scary experience to publicly share your personal story, but so important. So yeah, I'm just curious what stood out to you with all of that experience.
And what's your name?
I'm Lauren.
Lauren, thank you, Lauren. The face was because I experienced like something in my past all over again. I did not know that I had the power to control my story. I knew that if someone was giving me a platform that I could tell it, but I went through so many instances where I said one thing and they wrote it how they wanted to write it. If you Google me right now and write Barbie Izquierdo, Associated Press, Chicago Tribune, because I will never forget, you will see that there is a story from many, many, many years ago. However, the person that interviewed me, we had a great rapport. I can still remember just smiling with her the entire time. She made me feel amazing. And then in the story, she referred to me as bony. Those are the things that made me unapologetically me and tell my story. Because people are always going to have an opinion. And as the person telling the story, you have to have the power and control of your own narrative. What I learned was to be able to say no. But I'll give you another quick story on how that came about. When A Place at the Table premiered, I was given a bunch of tickets so that my family could come see it. And I wanted my children to see it for the first time as they were surrounded by people that they love. So they didn't tell, the producers, the filmmakers were there, but they didn't say that I was in the audience until after the film, and I stood up and people were able to ask me questions. There were talks about abuse, and this woman raises her hand and she says that she has a question for me, but that she wanted to ask me in private, so that was fine. After everything was over, when people come and mingle, she comes up to you. I mean, she came up to me and she said, you know, you mentioned abuse and you mentioned being a victim of sexual assault. My question is, how are you going to guarantee that that doesn't happen to your own daughter? Having to be face to face with someone asking me, like throwing my trauma in my face and asking me such a question was very, very difficult. And I answered it to the best of my ability, saying, as a person who went through what I went through, I know what to look for in the signs. I know how to protect my children, and I will do that at any cost. After that, the filmmakers came up to me and said, you can say no. When you're coming from poverty and you're being asked questions, you're in the spotlight, or just someone acting like they care, they're going to tell you. They're going to answer your questions. People don't really know they have the power to say no. So as the person asking the questions, I would encourage you to just start with that. Make sure that you make people comfortable in knowing that they can trust you, that whatever they don't want to be disclosed, whether they tell you or not, that you don't actually disclose that part in, you know, whatever it is that you're writing. Provide an edit before it goes out, so that if they feel like they've been portrayed in a light that they don't like, or maybe they want to use a better word to make them feel better about themselves, that you give them that power to know that you care about their input. And if there is any back and forth, to make sure you serve as an advocate to portray the person how they want to be portrayed, and while still getting your story. Another tip that I would give is just be completely transparent and don't overpromise. If I know it's difficult listening to stories and wanting to help so bad, but if there's anything that you just can't do, to just be transparent about it, and if you can offer yourself in another way, then, you know, and you're willing to do that. But over-promising someone who comes from poverty is detrimental to them. There's already a distrust in the government and in public programs, because they're so hard to qualify for, that like if someone is showing an interest, they're gonna wanna participate, and 9 out of 10 times they're not gonna care what is said until after everything is done, because in the moment they just want to be heard. They want to feel like they're seen. So I would just encourage you to continue to help them feel seen and feel heard, and also to let them know that in your story collections, that they don't have to have it all figured out. Sometimes people think that community solutions need to come from the community, and that we know how to do it on our own. And the reality of the situation is we can provide suggestions throughout because of what we've been through, but we need that other aspect, those legislators, those policymakers, the people the researchers that have the data that you need to go hand in hand with lived experience to actually make the change. So remind them that if they're not that research person, if they're not that math person, that it's okay, they can still be successful. Of course, thank you. I think question behind, yes.
Hi, Barbie. My name is Nia. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. This was a very impactful and illuminating session. So you were talking about kind of like the emotional labor that comes with sharing your story. And, you know, in being so vulnerable, people like you who like tell their story, right? Like I feel kind of protective over that because you're being so vulnerable. So my question is, how have you seen your lived experience shape policy? Like, what are decision makers doing with the stories that they're hearing? Are there any situations maybe where they were thinking about doing it one way, but then, because I know you were talking about you're on committees and you know, you're in different rooms with different people, because sometimes, you know, when you're away from the problem, the solution that you might come up with, someone who with lived experience may be like, oh, I'm not sure if this will work, you know. So I'm just curious about how decision makers or just, you know, these people that you've been with are using this gift that you're giving us of vulnerability and things like that.
Absolutely, great question. Thank you so much, Nia. I think that the biggest change that we can see that has happened because of the advocacy of people with lived experience is the White House Conference on Hunger, Health, and Nutrition. It hadn't happened in over 50 years. So to see that it came back in 2022, 2023 was amazing, because before that, it just felt like no other president cared as much to put it back, you know, to have legislators and lawmakers and senators and congressmen and people with lived experience and people from different organizations all coming together to learn and talk about these things has been such a change and so rewarding, at least for me. So for the White House conference, there were 50 people that were chosen. I think the initial was 50, but I think it ended up being a little bit more than that. But they had chosen 50 people with lived experience to come to the conference on hunger. And to see so many people with smiles, knowing that what they're saying is just as important as the congressman next to them because they were in a room, is something that is completely life-changing. As far as policy work, I can give a specific example. My children are 19 and 17 now. My advocacy started when my son was 3 months old, which I talked about him being at risk for losing his vision, but by the grace of God and the universe and all things, my son is fine. He didn't need the surgery to salvage his eyesight. He does need glasses, but he's fine. ADHD. What was I saying? Thank you. Policy. So I received WIC for the longevity of my children from the time that they were born till the time that they were 5 years old. But even after I no longer qualified for WIC, I helped advocate for the program, and there were things added on. So I know that, like, I can't tell you, unfortunately, exactly what it is, but girl, let me tell you, when it happened, I was like, that is not fair. Like, how they gonna give them this stuff now that I don't qualify? But it also made me feel like, holy shit, I did that. Like, I was a part of that. My crying, my story, my tears were worth something to someone that said this needs to change. I think right now, Feeding America and just in my work, I've seen and been a part of a lot of work with the USDA. So right now, what the USDA is working on is changing nutrition labels and updating them so that for one, they want to make them more appealing so that people actually read nutrition labels. But just in advocacy, seeing all of those sort of things that like your work is leading to changes that are forever going to be, something that was different than what we had normally experienced, is what keeps me in this fight. Like it's not just about providing opportunities for people with lived experience, but it's actually what are the sustainable changes that we can do so that people don't continue to go through this. So I wish that I could have told you exactly what those things from WIC are, just to give that, context, but I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Oh, Zoom people. Okay. Just kidding. I can be loud, but it's not relevant. My name is Sari. Thank you so much for coming today. I am very interested in working policy, and I know a lot of other people who are also interested in policy and politics here. And I personally, through working already in that sector a little bit, have seen how people's stories can be really impactful and how they can really be neglected and pushed aside, and the power of lobbyists and money and doing things because it seems like the socially right thing to do versus listening to what people actually need. And I'm curious if you have any kind of wisdom on how you were able to kind of like tell your story in a way that has allowed people to listen and make tangible change, because a lot of people try to do what you do and it's not necessarily successful. But we've seen through your work, and I looked up a little bit too, like there's been real tangible progress, and there's also been a lot of progress that might not be like tangible as in new bills or funding, but things that really have been changed. Did you like ever? Yeah, that's basically my question about kind of like how do you feel like your story has been successful in kind of like making this change?
Yeah. Thank you for your question, Sarah. I honestly, I'm very privileged in my work because I've been doing this for so long. I think people just listen to me now, but I think that if it wasn't for the documentary that I was in, A Place at the Table, that people wouldn't care. Like, I think the documentary gave people that raw, uncut, inside look of what poverty looks like, what it feels like, and also the fight. The film doesn't only show my personal struggles with food insecurity, it shows my journey into advocacy. Like my first time going to the Capitol building and speaking at the Rotunda, I had a folder with this huge speech that I had worked on the entire time. And then once I got there, I didn't even open it and I just spoke from the heart. And I think that vulnerability is something that you can't put a price on. However, in order to make this movement, it needs to be done. That is what it takes for people to really, really understand. The problem with that is that you can't force anyone to be vulnerable. They have to be comfortable. They have to be self-assured to know that they can walk off the stage and not feel like they're inferior to everyone else. So that takes a lot of community, a lot of support, a lot of building, a lot of trust building. So personally, I am privileged that although it doesn't always feel like privilege because I'm talking about such difficult things, I was the person that was chosen to be in this film, and I can't act like if it wasn't for that, people would still care about what I had to say. They saw my tears, they saw my children struggling, and I think that's what raised the awareness. I think that goes hand in hand, that when I'm in the room, I came to y'all today very me, very, tattoos out, I got jeans on, I got, my dunks on. I came as me, but when I'm in those other settings, I show them the accolades that I have in my speech, in the person that they're seeing, because it's very easy to say no if you just look at me. But if you hear what I have to say and you see all that I've done, then I'm more, people take me more serious. So what I would say for the people that don't have a documentary backing up their story is to find community in people like me, because we can help build you. We can help give you the tools and the resources that you need to feel that confident, to be able to open up and be vulnerable. But I also want to say that to the people that don't feel comfortable being vulnerable, that's okay too. You shouldn't have to feel obligated to exploit yourself and your family just to tell your story. There are ways to tell your story without being so personal the way that I am. But I just feel like I'm a connector and I like connecting to my audience. So whatever it takes in that moment, I'm just gonna do. For people who aren't like that, find your community. And I know that's not easy. I'm still looking for mine. But it's not impossible. Difficult isn't impossible. And as long as there's supportive people around, it can definitely bring out that level of vulnerability that needs to be shown in order for changes to be made. I think behind you, Trevor.
Hi, Barbie. I'm Sadie. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for being here and being vulnerable. And you said you're a connector, and you truly are. You've been here connecting with all of us. So I just wanted to make a comment and ask a question because I feel so drawn to you. And you talked a little bit about your own mother and your struggle with that and not wanting to become your mother. And, you know, you have a young daughter who now has such a beautiful, wonderful, and powerful woman to look up to. And before I ask, you can no, really, right? And of course, you can say no to this question, but I am curious what she's up to now as a young woman moving in this world, and then also like what your hopes are for her now that you're moving out of that poverty mindset and can dream bigger than just her surviving and now into her thriving.
Yeah, that, thank you so much for your question, Sadie. That is a difficult question in part. So I'll start with where she is now. My daughter is 19. She just graduated high school in May. So kudos to my baby, because neither one of her parents are high school graduates. Her grandparents aren't high school graduates. So she is a first generation graduate, and I'm so proud of her. She is right now, you know, taking a break. I definitely told her to do that. Graduating high school definitely takes a mental toll on you. So I wanted her to know what it felt like to wake up and not have to wake up at any time of the day if you felt like it, and take those mental health days of doing nothing that were so difficult to take when you were a student. But the good thing about where we live is her high school has a program that you can go. So she has until summer of 2025 to make that decision. So I'm encouraging her. She wants to be a mental health technician, so she knows what she wants to do. She went to a business academy, so she has a bunch of certifications. So yeah, she's gonna go to school. Layla, if you watch this, you're gonna go to school, girl. But I want her to also feel like she has the power to make her own decisions. So as of right now, I'm flexible. But as we get closer to summer 2025, I'm like, okay, because if I don't gotta pay for it, you going to school. My son is 17. He is a junior. He's doing great. He has found a passion for weightlifting. He actually told me he I don't know, it's not a bench press, it's with your leg presses. He did like 310 pounds, which I was like, but yeah, my kids are amazing. My therapist tells them that they have like blue ivy syndrome. She's like, she says that I'm Beyonce and they don't recognize it. They just treat me like I'm anybody. So they're like, you know, if you ask Blue Ivy who her mom is, it's just mom, you know, but to us, it's like, whoa, that's Beyonce. I want them to look at me like if I'm Beyonce, but they don't care anything about that. When I was appointed by President Biden into the Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, they just cared about like, oh, so what celebrities are we going to be able to meet? Like, kids, right? But they're amazing children. I think that now we're getting into the hard part. I think that for me, it's difficult setting goals for my children because I have an acknowledgement that I'm a very humble person, but I know that with the work that I've done, I would hope to be in some sort of history book. So I know as a child that can be very overwhelming to have this mom who goes out and speaks and, you know, does all of these things. So I'm a little fearful in being too pushy of my children and them resenting me of like, oh, you want us to be you. And I don't want that. I want them to be whatever they want to be. So I haven't really found like how to have the conversation with them about pursuing their dreams and what those goals are, because they are so disconnected from my work that it's like they don't talk about it, they don't post it, they don't like none of those things. So I respect it. But in my mind, I'm also like, I was able to do all of this. And as a mom, you always want your children to be better than you. So it just makes me think like, what are they going to be capable of? This is going to be amazing. But as a human being, I also try not to put that pressure on them so that they know like whatever it is that you do, I don't view you as a failure. I don't expect you to go change the world if that's not what you want to do. The world can be a very scary and pressurous place. So I just want to support them in whatever it is. Yeah, thank you for your question. Are there any more?
Maybe you have time for one more question, or we can.
Oh,
Good.
Hi, my name is Elena. First, I just want to say thank you so much for your vulnerability. It's super appreciated. I got a little emotional at the end of your presentation because your story reminds me of my parents and just how much they've sacrificed just for me to even be where I'm at right now. So with that in mind, I know with all of these experiences that I've even had with poverty, you talked a lot about the poverty mindset. And so I'm wondering, what is maybe the biggest hurdle that you may have had to overcome in regards to the poverty mindset? And how did, maybe you overcome that?
Thank you so much for your question, Elena. And kudos to your parents. They have raised an amazing young woman. I was watching you as I was speaking, and I can see when things resonated. So I don't know you personally, but I can see it in your aura that you're a very strong person, very beautiful. But in full transparency, I wouldn't say that I've overcome it. I think that the biggest hurdle is trying to get out of that survival mindset. It has even trickled down like into workspaces for me. So it's hard. Trying to accept that things are okay. And I know that sounds really weird, but coming from poverty, you expect for things to be taken from you. You expect for everything to just go wrong. So it's difficult waking up that way every day and to just have to remind yourself, like, look around, you're okay. Take a deep breath. That survival mode is very, very uncomfortable. And because of my mental health, there are moments where I still feel like I'm living in it. And, you know, somebody saying, well, you're not, you're better, you know, things are okay now, it doesn't do anything for me. So I think that therapy and my medication have definitely helped me overcome that, the feeling of helplessness. But as far as the barrier of like living in survival mode, it's still something that I struggle with. And it may be something that I struggle with for the rest of my life because I'm bipolar. So, you know, I have this acknowledgement that life comes with its ups and downs and that things can happen to anyone. But because I haven't fully overcome it, when things go wrong, it feels like the end of the world. It feels like for example, Ashley can tell you, I'm horrible with deadlines. I'm horrible with deadlines. It feels like a countdown to like the purge for me. Like it's horrible. And my job has, you know, has had to be very understanding and offering me different tools in order to help with that. But I got so excited about that I got help now, ADHD. Deadlines, boiling into work. Oh, so every single time that I miss a deadline at work, my poverty mindset makes me feel like I'm getting fired. So that the first thing that comes with that is, well, then avoid it. Avoid the deadline, avoid accountability, and just everything will be okay. No, it's not going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. But yeah, I think that first admitting to myself what my strengths are and what my weaknesses are has definitely helped me. Having the acknowledgement of my mental health and knowing, okay, if something goes wrong, it's gonna make me feel like this, but let's go back and analyze the reality of the situation. This is completely unrelated, but it's something that I feel like has saved my life. And one of the tattoos that I have that I've learned through my journey in mental health is the RAIN method. So when I'm feeling overwhelmed or when I feel like everything is going to come to an end and all of those things, I think back to the RAIN method. The R stands for recognize. So first recognize what it is that you're feeling. Recognize that you're uncomfortable. Then it's analyze. What are these feelings coming with? Does it give me a headache? Is it making my nerves tingle? Are my hands shaking? So after you analyze all of the feelings, it's investigate. Okay, so why am I feeling like this? Why is it making me feel like this? And then the N is nurture. After you've gone through all of those things, nurture, make sure that you're okay, love on yourself, and then tackle the problem. If you first look at the problem as what it really is, you know, what in recognizing, is this a mental health thing? Is this a poverty mindset thing? Is this a grief thing that someone is going through? Like, why are you in the place mentally? And breaking down all of those steps has definitely helped me. So although I don't feel like I've overcome the hurdle of being in survival mode, the RAIN method has definitely taught me that it's not my fault, that I'm gonna be okay, and this too shall pass. Thank you. Of course.
Let's give another round of applause. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next fall for the next series.